The autumn rain hammered against the windows of St. Andrew's University as Catherine Middleton hurried down the narrow corridor of St. Salvator's Hall. Her arms were full of art history books, and her mind was focused on the essay deadline looming ahead. She had no idea that behind one particular door, a conversation was taking place that would forever alter the course of British history. William Arthur Philip Lewis Windsor sat slumped in his desk chair, staring at the phone in his hand. The weight of his mother's death still pressed heavily on his shoulders, even though 3 years had passed since that terrible night in Paris. At 19, he was trying to be a normal university student, but the constant scrutiny and protection made every day feel like a performance. "I can't do this anymore, Harry," William whispered into the phone, his voice cracking with emotion. His younger brother was hundreds of miles away at Eton, but their bond remained unbreakable. "Everyone here either wants something from me or treats me like I'm made of glass. I feel so bloody alone." The door to William's room was slightly ajar, just enough for sound to travel into the hallway. Catherine had dropped one of her books, and as she bent to pick it up, she heard the raw pain in that familiar voice. She had seen William around campus, of course. Everyone had. But this was different. This wasn't the composed prince the world saw. This was a young man drowning in grief and isolation. Catherine stood frozen in the hallway, not wanting to intrude but unable to move away. She understood loneliness. Growing up in Bucklebury, she had often felt like an outsider looking in. Her parents, Michael and Carol, had worked tirelessly to build their party supply business, but money had always been tight in her early years. She remembered the embarrassment of wearing second-hand uniforms to school, while other children had everything new. "I keep thinking about Mummy," William continued, unaware of his audience. "She would hate seeing me like this. She always said I should follow my heart, but I don't even know what my heart wants anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I should just walk away from all of it." Through the crack in the door, Catherine could see William's silhouette against the window. His shoulders were shaking slightly, and she realized he was crying. The sight of this powerful young man, destined to be king, breaking down in private, moved something deep within her heart. Catherine had her own secrets, her own pain that she kept hidden from the world. The previous year, she had gone through a difficult period with an eating disorder, brought on by the pressure of university life and her own perfectionist tendencies. She had felt worthless, invisible, like she didn't matter to anyone. She understood the feeling of being surrounded by people yet feeling completely alone. As she listened to William's conversation with his brother, Catherine made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of walking away and pretending she hadn't heard anything, she gently knocked on the door. "Come in," William called, quickly wiping his eyes and trying to compose himself. Catherine pushed the door open slowly, holding up the book she had dropped. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I dropped this in the hallway and I think it might have hit your door. I just wanted to make sure I didn't disturb you." William looked at her with red-rimmed eyes, clearly embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable state. "It's fine, really, don't worry about it." But Catherine didn't leave. Something in his expression, the way he was trying so hard to hide his pain, reminded her of herself during her darkest moments. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. The question hung in the air between them. William had been asked this countless times by countless people, but there was something different about the way Catherine asked it. There was genuine concern in her voice, not the practiced politeness he was used to receiving. William started to give his usual answer, but the words died on his lips. Looking into Catherine's warm brown eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Understanding. Not pity, not curiosity, but real understanding. "No," he said simply. "I'm not okay." Catherine set her books down on his desk and sat in, the chair across from him. "Do you want to talk about it?" For the next 2 hours they talked. William found himself sharing things he had never told anyone except Harry. He talked about the pressure of his future role, about missing his mother, about feeling like he was living in a fishbowl where every move was watched and judged. Catherine listened without judgment, offering comfort when needed and honest observations when appropriate. In return, Catherine opened up about her own struggles. She talked about feeling like she didn't belong at such a prestigious university, about her battles with self-doubt and anxiety. She shared her fears about the future and her dreams of making a difference in the world somehow. As the evening wore on, they discovered they had more in common than either had expected. Both loved art and history. Both felt the weight of expectations from their families. Both had experienced profound loneliness despite being surrounded by people. When Catherine finally gathered her books to leave, William felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time since his mother's death, he had connected with someone who saw him as just William, not as the future king. "Thank you," he said as she reached the door. "For listening. For not running away when you realized I was falling apart." Catherine smiled, and William thought it was the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. Everyone falls apart sometimes. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. As the door closed behind her, William sat back in his chair and realized something had fundamentally shifted. The crushing loneliness that had been his constant companion was still there, but it felt lighter somehow. For the first time in years, he looked forward to tomorrow. Neither William nor Catherine knew it yet, but that conversation behind a slightly open door would be the foundation of a love story that would captivate the world and ultimately change the future of the British monarchy forever. 3 weeks had passed since that evening in William's room, and Catherine found herself thinking about their conversation constantly. She had seen him around campus several times since then, and each time their eyes met, there was an unspoken understanding between them. But William seemed to be pulling away, surrounding himself with his usual group of friends and his ever-present security detail. Catherine was walking through the town center when she spotted William sitting alone on a bench outside a small cafe, his head in his hands. His bodyguards stood at a respectful distance, but even they seemed concerned. Something was clearly wrong. Against her better judgment, Catherine approached him. "William?" He looked up and she was shocked by what she saw. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Kate," he said, using the nickname that only close friends called her. "I didn't expect to see you here." "What's happened?" she asked, sitting down beside him on the bench. William was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "I got a call from my father this morning. There's going to be another documentary about my mother. They want to interview everyone who knew her, including me and Harry. They want us to talk about that night, about how we felt when we found out she was dead." Catherine felt her heart break for him. She could see the pain radiating from every part of his being. "You don't have to do it if you're not ready." "That's what I told my father," William said bitterly. "But he said it's my duty, that the family needs to control the narrative before someone else does. He said Mummy would have wanted us to speak about her with dignity." "But what do you want?" Catherine asked gently. The question seemed to surprise William. I don't know. I feel like I've been living my entire life doing what other people think I should do. What my father thinks I should do. What the palace thinks I should do. What the press thinks I should do. I can't remember the last time someone asked me what I actually wanted." Catherine took his hand in hers, not caring if the bodyguards or passing pedestrians saw. "So what do you want, William? Right now in this moment, what do you want?" William looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "I want to run away," he whispered. "I want to go somewhere where no one knows who I am, where I can just be normal for once. I want to wake up in the morning and not have my entire day planned out for me. I want to make mistakes without them ending up on the front page of every newspaper in the country." "Then let's go," Catherine said simply. William stared at her. "What? Let's go. Right now. We can take my car and just drive. Find somewhere quiet where you can think." "I can't just leave," William protested, but Catherine could see the longing in his eyes. "The security, my schedule, my father would kill me. Sometimes you have to choose between what everyone else wants and what you need," Catherine said firmly. And right now, you need space to breathe. 20 minutes later, they were in Catherine's small blue car, driving out of St. Andrews, with William's security team following at a discreet distance. William had convinced them to give him some space by promising to stay in contact every hour. They drove for nearly 2 hours before Catherine pulled into a small car park overlooking the Scottish coast. The beach below was empty except for a few seagulls, and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks was the only noise. My mother used to bring me to places like this, William said as they walked down to the beach. When things got too overwhelming at the palace, she would bundle me and Harry into the car and drive us somewhere quiet. She said the ocean had a way of putting things in perspective. They sat on a piece of driftwood and watched the waves in comfortable silence. After a while, William began to talk. He told Catherine about the night his mother died, about how he and Harry had been at Balmoral with their father and grandparents. He described the confusion, the disbelief, and then the crushing reality that she was gone. The worst part, William said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the waves, was that I didn't get to say goodbye. The last time I spoke to her, I was annoyed because she had called during dinner. I was short with her, impatient. If I had known, it would be the last time. Catherine moved closer to him, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. She knew you loved her, William. Mothers always know. Do they? William asked, turning to look at her. Because sometimes I feel like I'm letting her down. She wanted me to follow my heart, to find happiness, but I don't even know what happiness looks like anymore. I think, Catherine said carefully, that happiness looks different for everyone. For some people, it's achieving great success or recognition. For others, it's simple moments of connection with people who truly understand them. William studied her face in the fading afternoon light. Is that what this is? A moment of connection? I think so, Catherine replied honestly. I've never felt like I could be completely myself with anyone before. Even with my closest friends, I always feel like I'm performing, trying to be who they want me to be. But with you, I don't feel that pressure. That's exactly how I feel, William said, seeming surprised by the realization. Even with Harry, sometimes I feel like I have to be the strong older brother. But with you, I can just be me. As the sun began to set, they walked along the water's edge. William talked about his dreams for the future, about wanting to make a real difference in the world, but feeling trapped by protocol and expectation. Catherine shared her own aspirations, her desire to work in art curation and her secret dream of somehow using her position to help others. What if we could do it together? William asked suddenly, stopping in the middle of the beach. What if we could find a way to make a difference but do it our own way? Catherine looked at him, confused. What do you mean? I mean, what if this isn't just a friendship? What if we could be partners in everything? You make me feel like I can be myself, Kate. You make me feel like maybe I don't have to choose between duty and happiness. The weight of what he was suggesting hit Catherine like a physical blow. She understood that William wasn't just talking about a relationship. He was talking about a future that would thrust her into the spotlight in ways she couldn't even imagine. William, she said carefully, you know what that would mean, don't you? For me, for my family, for my entire life. Nothing would ever be private again. Every decision I made would be scrutinized and judged. I know, William said, taking her hands in his. And I know I have no right to ask that of you. But I also know that for the first time since my mother died, I can imagine a future that doesn't terrify me. And you're in it. Catherine looked out at the ocean, feeling the weight of the decision before her. She thought about her quiet life in Bucklebury, her close-knit family, her dreams of a normal career. She thought about the intense scrutiny that came with being connected to the royal family, the loss of privacy, the constant pressure. But she also thought about the broken young man sitting beside her, about the vulnerability he had shown her, about the connection they shared that felt deeper than anything she had ever experienced. I need time to think, she said finally. William nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. Of course. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I don't want to pressure you. You're not pressuring me, Catherine assured him. You're being honest about your feelings, and I appreciate that. But this is bigger than just the two of us, and I need to consider what it would mean for everyone involved. As they drove back to St. Andrews in comfortable silence, both of them knew that something fundamental had shifted between them. The question now was whether Catherine was brave enough to step through the door that William had opened for her, knowing that once she did, there would be no going back. Catherine sat at her small desk in her student accommodation, staring at the blank piece of paper before her. It had been 5 days since her conversation with William on the beach, and she hadn't been able to concentrate on anything. Her art history essay remained unfinished. Her phone calls with her parents had been stilted and awkward, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw William's face when he had asked her to consider a future together. The knock on her door came at exactly the time she had been expecting it. She had asked William to come by after his afternoon lectures, knowing they needed to talk properly about what had happened between them. "Hi," he said quietly when she opened the door. He looked as tired as she felt, and she wondered if he had been sleeping as poorly as she had. "Come in," Catherine said, stepping aside to let him enter her small room. "I made tea." They sat facing each other, the tiny space feeling even smaller with the weight of unspoken words between them. William waited patiently while Catherine gathered her thoughts, not pushing or pressuring her to speak. "I called my mother yesterday," Catherine began, her hands wrapped around her warm mug. "I didn't tell her about you, about what you said. But I asked her about love, about how she knew my father was the right person for her." William leaned forward slightly, his attention completely focused on her words. "She said something interesting," Catherine continued. "She said that love isn't just about how someone makes you feel when things are good. It's about whether you can face the difficult times together, whether you can be completely honest with each other even when the truth is uncomfortable." "And what did you realize when she said that?" William asked gently. Catherine took a deep breath. "I realized that I've been thinking about this all wrong. I've been so focused on what choosing you would cost me that I haven't considered what not choosing you would cost me." William's eyes searched her face, hope beginning to flicker in his expression. "The truth is," Catherine said, her voice growing stronger, "I've been falling in love with you since that first night when you let me see past all the titles and expectations to the real person underneath, and I've been terrified because I've never felt anything this intense before." "Kate," William started, but she held up her hand. "Let me finish. I need to say this while I still have the courage." Catherine set down her mug and looked directly at him. "I know that choosing to be with you means choosing a life I never planned for. It means giving up privacy, dealing with criticism, having every outfit and expression analyzed by strangers. It means my family will be scrutinized, my past will be examined, and my future will belong as much to the British public as it does to me." William's face had grown serious, and Catherine could see him preparing to tell her she didn't have to do any of that he understood if it was too much. But she wasn't finished. "But I also know that walking away from you would mean walking away from something real and precious. It would mean choosing safety over love, comfort over growth, and I don't think I could live with that regret." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then William stood up from his chair and crossed the small space between them, dropping to his knees beside her chair. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that I want to try. I want to see where this goes, even though it terrifies me. I want to be with you, William, not because of who you are to the world, but because of who you are to me." William reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away, tears that Catherine hadn't even realized she was crying. "I love you," he said simply. "I love your strength, your kindness, your honesty. I love how you see through all the nonsense to what really matters. I love how you make me feel like I can be the man I want to be instead of just the man I'm supposed to be." When they kissed, it felt like coming home and stepping off a cliff at the same time. Catherine understood that this moment was changing everything, not just for them but for the future of the monarchy itself. Over the next few hours, they talked about practical matters. William explained that their relationship would need to remain private for as long as possible, that there would be security briefings and protocol training in Catherine's future. He was honest about the challenges she would face, the intense scrutiny and criticism that would come from being associated with him. "There will be people who say you're not good enough," William warned her, his hands holding hers tightly. "They'll criticize your background, your family, everything about you. They'll compare you to my mother, to other women in my life, to some impossible standard of perfection." "And what will you say when they do that?" Catherine asked. "I'll say that you're exactly who I chose, and that my choice is the only one that matters," William replied firmly. "I'll protect you as much as I can, Kate, but I can't shield you from everything. The press can be vicious, and some people will never accept that I have the right to choose love over duty." Catherine considered this, thinking about her quiet life in Berkshire, her close relationship with her parents and siblings. "What about my family? Will they be safe?" "I'll make sure of it," William promised. "My security team will brief your parents about basic precautions, and will monitor any threats or unwanted attention. Your family will be protected, I swear to you." As the evening wore on, they began to plan their secret relationship. They would need to be careful about when and where they were seen together. William would need to clear certain activities with his security team, and Catherine would need to learn to be more aware of her surroundings, to notice if she was being followed or photographed. "It sounds exhausting," Catherine admitted. "It is," William said honestly. "But I promise you, Kate, I will do everything in my power to make sure we have moments like this. Private moments where we can just be us." The next morning, Catherine woke up feeling like she had stepped into someone else's life. The decision was made, and there was no going back. She was now secretly dating the future King of England, and nobody could prepare her for what that really meant. But as she got ready for her morning lectures, she felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. Despite all the uncertainty and fear, despite the enormous changes ahead of her, she felt a deep sense of rightness about her choice. Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Good morning, beautiful. Thank you for taking this leap with me. I won't let you fall." Catherine smiled as she typed back, "We'll catch each other." What neither of them knew was that their secret wouldn't remain secret for long. Already there were whispers around campus about the prince's mysterious new girlfriend. A photographer had spotted them walking together near the beach, and while the image was blurry and distant, it was enough to start rumors. The door that had opened with their first conversation was now fully ajar, and the world was about to discover that Prince William had found someone willing to step through it with him, whatever the cost. The phone call came at 6 a.m, jarring Catherine from sleep with its urgent ringing. She grabbed it groggily, seeing William's name on the screen. "Kate, you need to see the newspapers." William's voice was tight with controlled panic. "They know about us." Catherine's blood turned to ice. It had been 3 months since they had decided to be together. 3 wonderful months of secret dates and stolen moments. They had been so careful, or so they thought. "How bad is it?" she asked, already climbing out of bed and reaching for her laptop. "Bad," William said grimly. "The Sun has photos of us from last week when we went to that pub in the village. The headline is Will's Mystery Girl. They don't have your name yet, but they will soon." Catherine's hands shook as she opened the newspaper's website. There, splashed across the front page, was a grainy photo of her and William sitting close together. In a corner booth, his hand covering hers on the table, the story speculated wildly about who she might be, describing her as a brunette beauty who has clearly captured the prince's attention. "Oh God," Catherine whispered, sinking into her desk chair. "My parents. They don't know about us yet. They're going to see this and—" "Kate, breathe." William's voice came through the phone, calm and reassuring despite his own obvious stress. "I'm on my way over. Don't leave your room. Don't answer your door for anyone except me. My security team is already implementing protection protocols for you and your family." Over the next few hours, Catherine's world turned upside down. Her phone rang constantly with calls from unknown numbers. She could hear photographers gathering outside her building, their voices carrying up to her window. Her email inbox filled, with interview requests from journalists around the world. When William arrived with his security detail, Catherine barely recognized the composed royal figure who entered her room. Gone was the vulnerable young man she had fallen in love with. In his place was someone who moved with authority and spoke with the clipped precision of someone trained to handle crises. "The palace is releasing a statement asking for privacy while you complete your studies," William told her, his hands gentle as he pulled her into his arms. "But that won't stop them, Kate. From now on, everything changes." Catherine buried her face against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent and trying to center herself. "I knew this would happen eventually. I just hoped we'd have more time." "So, did I?" William murmured into her hair. "But we'll get through this. I promise you we'll get through this together." The next few days were a blur of activity. Catherine was moved to a safe house off campus while William's team worked to manage the media storm. Her parents, Michael and Carol, were contacted by palace officials and given a security briefing that left them shocked and overwhelmed. "Katie," her mother said during a tense phone call, "why didn't you tell us? We could have prepared somehow, been ready for this." Catherine felt the guilt crush down on her chest. Her family's peaceful life in Bucklebury was already being disrupted by reporters trying to get information about her background. Her younger siblings, Pippa and James, were being followed by photographers on their way to school and work. "I'm sorry, Mum," Catherine said through her tears. "I wanted to tell you, but William thought it would be safer if fewer people knew. We thought we could keep it quiet longer." "And now?" Her father's voice came through the speaker. "What happens to our family now, Katie?" It was William who answered, having taken the phone from Catherine's trembling hands. "Mr. and Mrs. Middleton, I know this is overwhelming, but I want you to know that Catherine means everything to me. I will do whatever it takes to protect her and your family from the worst of this attention." But protection could only go so far. Within a week, every detail of Catherine's life was public knowledge. The press had discovered her parents' business, her private school education, her gap year activities, even her childhood nickname. Photographers camped outside party pieces, her family's company, disrupting business and frightening employees. The criticism began almost immediately. Some newspapers questioned whether Catherine was sophisticated enough for William, calling her Weighty Katie and suggesting she was too middle class for the royal family. Others criticized her appearance, her clothing choices, even the way she spoke. "Prince William's commoner girlfriend," read one particularly harsh headline. "Is Kate Middleton good enough for our future king?" Catherine sat in the safe house reading the cruel articles about herself, feeling her confidence crumble with each word. The woman they described bore little resemblance to the person she knew herself to be, but the constant barrage of criticism was beginning to make her question everything about herself. "You can't read that rubbish," William said, finding her hunched over her laptop one evening, tears streaming down her face. "Those people don't know you. They don't know your heart, your intelligence, your strength." "But what if they're right?" Catherine asked, her voice small and broken. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm just fooling myself, thinking I can handle this life?" William knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his and forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me, Kate. The only opinions that matter are yours and mine. These people tearing you down in the press, they don't know that you sat with me for hours when I was breaking apart over my mother. They don't know how you make me laugh, how you challenge me to be better, how you see possibilities where I only see obstacles." "I just feel so exposed," Catherine whispered. "Everything about me, about my family, is out there for everyone to judge. I can't even call my sister without worrying that someone is listening in." William pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she cried. "I know it's hard. I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want to walk away, Kate, I'll understand. I'll make sure you and your family are protected, and I'll never ask anything more of you." Catherine pulled back to look at him, seeing the pain in his eyes at the thought of losing her. Is that what you want? For me to walk away? God, no. William said fiercely. I want you to stay and fight this with me. I want us to prove them all wrong, to show them that love doesn't care about class or protocol or what the newspapers think. But I won't trap you in this life if you're not ready for it. Catherine wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. I'm scared, William. I'm more scared than I've ever been in my life, but I'm not ready to give up on us. Then we keep going, William said, pressing his forehead against hers. One day at a time, one challenge at a time. And Kate, you are more than good enough. You're extraordinary. As they held each other in the quiet safe house, both of them understood that this was just the beginning. The real test of their relationship wasn't whether they could be happy together in private moments, but whether their love could survive the intense scrutiny and pressure of life in the public eye. The door that had opened between them was now a gateway that the entire world was watching, waiting to see if Catherine would have the strength to walk through it completely, or if the weight of royal expectation would crush their love before it had a chance to fully bloom. 2 years had passed since Catherine's world had been turned upside down by that first newspaper headline, and the constant pressure was beginning to show. She sat in the drawing room of Clarence's house, staring at the engagement ring William had given her just 3 hours earlier. The enormous sapphire surrounded by diamonds had once belonged to Princess Diana, and wearing it felt like carrying the weight of history on her finger. Are you having second thoughts? William asked quietly from across the room. He had been watching her carefully since she had said yes to his proposal, and he could see the anxiety written across her face. No, Catherine said quickly, then paused. Maybe. I don't know, William. I'm terrified. The past 2 years had been a brutal education in what it meant to be connected to the royal family. Catherine had endured countless tabloid stories analyzing everything from her weight to her wardrobe, to her family's business dealings. She had watched her mother being criticized for chewing gum at a society event, her sister being called attention-seeking for simply existing, and her brother being hounded by photographers wherever he went. The pressure had taken its toll on their relationship too. There had been arguments about Catherine's reluctance to attend certain royal events, about William's inability to shield her from criticism, about the constant intrusion into their private moments. They had briefly broken up the previous year, both of them overwhelmed by the intensity of public scrutiny. The wedding, Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper. 1 billion people will be watching. What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I say the wrong words? What if I'm not what they expect a future queen to be? William crossed the room and sat beside her on the sofa, taking her free hand in both of his. Do you remember what you told me that first night about everyone falling apart sometimes? Catherine nodded, her eyes filling with tears. You're not falling apart, Kate. You're just scared, and that's completely normal. I was terrified before my first major royal engagement too. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the speech my father had written for me. But you were born into this, Catherine protested. You've been preparing for this your entire life. I'm just a girl from Berkshire whose parents own a party supply company. And that's exactly why you're perfect for this, William said firmly. You bring something to the royal family that we've been missing for too long. You're real. Kate, you're genuine in a way that people can connect with. When you smile, it's because you mean it, not because protocol demands it. Catherine looked down at the ring again, thinking about Diana, about the fairy tale that had turned into a nightmare, about the woman who had died trying to escape the very life Catherine was about to enter willingly. Your mother, Catherine began hesitantly. Do you ever worry that I'll end up like her? That this life will destroy me the way it destroyed her? William was quiet for a long moment, his face grave. Every single day, he admitted finally. But there's a difference, Kate. My mother was 19 when she married my father, barely out of childhood. She was thrown into royal life with no preparation, no real understanding of what she was getting into. You're different. You're stronger, more mature. And I'm different from my father, too. I've learned from his mistakes. How can you be so sure? Because I've watched you handle 2 years of the worst the press can throw at you, and you're still here. You're still you. Yes, you've been hurt by it, but you haven't let it change who you are fundamentally. That takes incredible strength. Catherine stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the crowds of people who had already begun gathering outside the palace gates, hoping for a glimpse of her or William. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself, she confessed. I can't go anywhere without thinking about how it will look in the newspapers. I can't wear a dress without wondering if it's appropriate or too casual or too formal. I can't even hug my own sister in public without someone analyzing what it means. William joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I know it's hard. I know the price you're paying is higher than anyone should have to pay. But Kate, think about what we could accomplish together. Think about the causes we could champion, the lives we could touch, the positive change we could bring to the world. Catherine leaned back against his chest, drawing comfort from his warmth and strength. I keep thinking about that little girl I met at the children's hospital last month. Do you remember her? Sarah, the one with leukemia? The one who told you that you were prettier than all the princesses in her storybooks, William said with a smile in his voice. She said something else that day, Catherine continued. After all the cameras had gone away when it was just us talking quietly, she told me that seeing me there made her feel like maybe she could be brave too, that if I could handle being scared and still smile, maybe she could handle her treatments. William tightened his arms around her. You see? That's exactly what I'm talking about. You have a gift, Kate. You connect with people in a way that's genuine and healing. That little girl didn't care about your dress or your background or what the newspaper said about you. She just saw someone who understood what it meant to be frightened, but to keep going anyway. But what if I'm not strong enough for what's coming? Catherine asked, her voice small with vulnerability. The wedding is just the beginning. After that, it's a lifetime of this scrutiny, this pressure. What if I crumble under it? William turned her around in his arms so he could look directly into her eyes. Then I'll help you get back up, and you'll help me when I stumble. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Being each other's strength when we can't find our own. Catherine studied his face, seeing the love and determination there, but also recognizing the weight he carried as well. Are you sure you want this life? For us, William. Sometimes I wonder if you'd be happier if you could just walk away from all of it too. There are days when I fantasize about it, William admitted honestly. Days when I imagine us living somewhere quiet and anonymous, where our biggest worry would be paying the mortgage or what to have for dinner. But then I remember my mother's work with landmines, her visits to AIDS patients when no one else would touch them, the way she used her position to bring attention to people who had been forgotten by society. I remember that this privilege comes with responsibility. And you think I can handle that responsibility? I think you already are handling it. Every time you visit a charity, every time you speak to young people about mental health, every time you show up despite the criticism and the pressure, you're using your position to make a difference. You're becoming the woman I always knew you could be. Catherine walked back to the sofa and sat down, her engagement ring catching the light from the window. There's something else I'm worried about, she said quietly. Something I haven't told you. William sat beside her, his expression concerned. What is it? Yesterday I had lunch with an old friend from university, someone who knew me before all of this started. She said something that's been bothering me ever since. Catherine twisted the ring around her finger nervously. She said I've changed, that I'm more guarded now, more careful about everything I say and do. She said sometimes she feels like she's talking to a polished version of me instead of the real me. And how did that make you feel? Terrified, Catherine admitted. Because I think she might be right. I catch myself editing my words, calculating how everything will sound if it gets repeated. I'm losing spontaneity, losing the ability to just be natural and unguarded. William was quiet for several minutes processing what she had said. My father once told me that the hardest part of royal life isn't the public appearances or the state dinners, or even the media attention. It's maintaining your authentic self while living under constant observation. He said my mother struggled with that more than anything else. How do you do it? How do you stay yourself? Honestly, I don't always succeed. There are times when I feel like I'm playing a role, being the prince people expect rather than the man I actually am. But I've learned to hold on to certain core truths about myself, things that no amount of protocol or public pressure can change. Like what? Like the fact that I care more about helping people than about following outdated rules. Like my belief that the monarchy has to evolve and become more relevant to modern Britain. Like my absolute certainty that I want to spend my life with you regardless of what anyone else thinks about that choice. Catherine reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. I need you to promise me something, William. Anything. Promise me that if this life starts to destroy who if I become someone we don't recognize, you'll tell me. Promise me you won't let me disappear into this role completely. I promise, William said solemnly. And I need the same promise from you. If I start to lose myself in duty and protocol, if I stop being the man you fell in love with, you have to call me on it. I promise, Catherine said, and for the first time since putting on the engagement ring, she felt a sense of peace. That evening, as they prepared for the official announcement of their engagement, Catherine stood in front of the mirror adjusting her blue dress. The woman looking back at her was poised and elegant, ready to face the cameras and questions that awaited her. But underneath the polished exterior, she could still see traces of the girl from Berkshire who had knocked on a prince's door and changed both their lives forever. The door between their private world and their public future was about to open completely, but Catherine finally felt ready to walk through it. Not because she wasn't afraid anymore, but because she had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing love and purpose and service despite the fear. The announcement would go out in an hour, and then there would be no going back. But as William squeezed her hand and whispered, "Ready?" she realized she had been ready all along. The morning of April 29th, 2011, Catherine woke before dawn in the Goring Hotel, her stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and terror. In just a few hours, she would walk down the aisle of Westminster Abbey and become the Duchess of Cambridge. More importantly, she would publicly commit herself to a life she was still learning to navigate. Her sister Pippa found her sitting by the window, still in her robe, watching the crowds that had been gathering since midnight. Having second thoughts? Pippa asked gently, settling into the chair beside her. Third and fourth thoughts, Catherine admitted with a shaky laugh. There are thousands of people out there, Pippa. Millions more watching on television. What if I'm not ready for this? Kate, Pippa said firmly, using her sister's childhood nickname. I've watched you handle everything they've thrown at you for the past 3 years. The nasty headlines, the photographers following our family, the pressure to be perfect all the time. You've never once let it break you. It came close sometimes, but it didn't break you. And today isn't about them. Pippa gestured toward the window. Today is about you and William choosing each other, in front of God and everyone forever. Everything else is just noise. Catherine nodded, taking comfort in her sister's practical wisdom. I keep thinking about his mother, about how young she was, how unprepared. What if I end up like her? You won't, Pippa said with absolute certainty. Do you know why? Why? Because you're not doing this alone. Diana was isolated, cut off from her support system, but you have us, your family. You have William, who actually listens to you and respects your opinions. And most importantly, you have yourself. You know who you are, Kate. Don't let anyone, not the press, not the palace, not anyone, make you forget that. A few hours later, Catherine stood in the Abbey's doorway, her father's arm steady beneath her trembling hand. The massive cathedral stretched before her, filled with world leaders, celebrities, and members of the royal family. But all she could see was William, standing at the altar in his red military uniform, his face bright with joy and love as he watched her approach. As she began the long walk down the aisle, Catherine felt a strange calm settle over her. With each step, the noise and scrutiny of the outside world seemed to fade away. This wasn't about putting on a performance for the cameras or living up to public expectations. This was about two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and chosen to build a life together despite every obstacle in their path. When she reached William, he mouthed, "You look beautiful," and she felt her nervousness melt away completely. This was the same man who had shared his deepest fears with her in a university dorm room, who had held her while she cried over cruel newspaper articles, who had promised to protect her heart even when he couldn't protect her from public criticism. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of ancient words and sacred music, but certain moments stood out with crystal clarity. The way William's voice shook slightly when he promised to love and honor her, the feel of his hands as he slipped the ring onto her finger, the moment when the Archbishop of Canterbury pronounced them husband and wife, and William's face lit up with pure happiness. "I can't believe we actually did it," William whispered as they signed the marriage register, momentarily shielded from the cameras. "I can't believe how many people are watching us do it," Catherine replied, and they both dissolved into slightly hysterical laughter. The carriage ride back to Buckingham Palace was surreal. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets, waving flags and cheering. Catherine waved back, still trying to process that all of this celebration was for her, for them, for the choice they had made to love each other publicly and completely. "Do you regret it?" William asked quietly as they waved to the crowds. "Any of it?" Catherine considered the question seriously. The past few years had been the most challenging of her life. She had been criticized, analyzed, and judged in ways she could never have imagined. Her family had been dragged into a spotlight they had never sought. She had lost friends who couldn't handle the attention that came with knowing her, and gained others who only wanted to be close to her because of her connection to William. But she had also discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. She had learned to use her position to highlight causes she cared about. She had found her voice as an advocate for mental health awareness and children's welfare. Most importantly, she had found a partner who challenged her to be better while loving her exactly as she was. "No," she said finally, squeezing William's hand. "I don't regret any of it. Even the hard parts led us here." The balcony appearance was the final test. Standing before the massive crowd gathered in front of Buckingham Palace, Catherine felt the weight of history and expectation pressing down on her. When William leaned in for the kiss the crowd was demanding, she was kissing not just her new husband but accepting her role as a future queen. But as the cheers erupted around them, Catherine realized something profound. The door that had opened between them years ago hadn't been about choosing between her old life and a new one. It had been about choosing growth over safety, love over fear, service over comfort. Later that evening, as they finally had a quiet moment alone, William found Catherine sitting in their private apartment, still in her wedding dress but with her shoes kicked off and her hair slightly mussed from the day's activities. "How are you feeling, Your Royal Highness?" he asked with a grin, using her new title teasingly. Catherine made a face at the formal address. "Overwhelmed, exhausted, incredibly happy, terrified about what comes next." She paused, then smiled. "But also like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." William sat beside her, pulling her close. "You were magnificent today, Kate. Watching you walk down that aisle, seeing how naturally you connected with everyone you met, I've never been more proud of anyone in my life." "I kept thinking about that little girl from the hospital," Catherine said. "Sarah. I wondered if she was watching, if seeing this might give her hope somehow, that maybe fairy tales can be real, even if they're more complicated than the storybooks make them seem." "That's who you are," William said softly. "That's why I knew from the beginning that you were the right person for this life. You don't see the crowds or the cameras first. You see the individual people, the ones who need hope or comfort or just to feel seen." Catherine leaned against his shoulder, feeling the weight of the day settling into her bones. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to be married royals together. We make mistakes, we learn from them, we support each other through the difficult times, and we try to make a positive difference in the world. And if I stumble, then I'll help you get back up. And when I stumble, you'll do the same for me." That's what we promised today in front of God and everyone, as they sat together in the quiet of their apartment. Catherine understood that the door she had walked through hadn't just changed her life, or even just William's life. It had changed the future of the monarchy itself. She brought something new to the ancient institution: authenticity, relatability, and a genuine desire to serve. The criticism would continue, she knew. There would be more difficult days, more pressure, more scrutiny. But there would also be opportunities to make a real difference, to use her position to help people who needed it most, to show the world that the royal family could be both traditional and modern, both dignified and accessible. The girl from Berkshire who had knocked on a prince's door at university was gone, transformed into a woman ready to be a future queen. But at her core, Catherine remained the same person who had seen past titles and protocol to the lonely young man who just needed someone to listen. The door that had changed history was now fully open, and Catherine had walked through it completely, carrying with her not just her own dreams but the hopes of a nation ready for a new kind of royal story. A story built on genuine love, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to service that would define the monarchy for generations to come. Just hadn't known it yet.